Hi everyone, Karina here, and this is my Friday, February 22nd edition of Featured Femme Fridays. I am here with Maggie Morris from Whispers of Wisdom. She is a certified death doula and just really stepping into a new journey, which is pretty amazing. So thank you for joining me. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and give this a try.
Yeah, because this is your first live and for anything, right?
Yes, this is my first live, and I have 2 more booked already. So we'll give this one a go.
Awesome. I'm really happy that I could be your first in this.
My test Yeah, the first, that sounds weird. Let's not make this weird.
Okay, we're not going to make this weird. I have the privilege, last week I got to sit down with my sister, and this week Maggie is my mother-in-law. So I'm pretty honored to have some pretty amazing women in my life that I get to share this journey with. So thank you so much. Speaking of journeys, I would really love you to share your journey about what brought you to be a death doula.
Well, I think personally that what we are intended to be is given to us in the womb. I think it's planted as our seed is planted in our mother's womb. What we are meant to be is planted there as well. However, life circumstances, personal choices, all of those things play in whether we fully become what we're intended to be. And I think this particular journey of where I am right now is part of me growing into the person that I was fully intended to be. That journey came about in 2017 with the death of my mother. My sister, Betty Long, came here to live at my house. My mom died here in this house. And Betty came to make that possible, because without her help, I would never have been able to do it on my own. And so the 2 of us decided to plunge in and take this journey and keep mom where she was comfortable. And this is where she wanted to be, and so we did. She had been diagnosed many years earlier with congestive heart failure. But for anyone who understands congestive heart failure, it kind of has a life of its own. You will have varying degrees of up and down, up and down, up and down. One year you say, oh, well, this is their last year, they're probably going to die this year, and then they bounce back and they don't. Well, in 2017, it became clear to us that she was not going to get better. Okay. We still hoped and prayed she would, but we knew she wasn't. So we decided to do all that we could do to keep her at home and keep her as comfortable as possible. And in the process of that, it was a learning journey for all of us, because there's many gaps within the healthcare system when somebody is trying to die at home. And the one thing that I learned in becoming a death doula is that, just like with the birthing doula, giving birth and dying are 2 things that our body knows how to do all by itself.
Yeah.
Medicine helps us to do it well, helps us to do it pain-free, and helps the process. But it's also something that our body can do all by itself. Our bodies are made that way. And death doulas can help people to journey on that journey and to die what we call well. Dying without pain is left up to the medical community, but finding peace and contentment in your journey, death doulas can help with that.
That's lovely. I think that that's a really good point, that a lot of people, it scares us. And Amy says the healthcare system is ridiculous at times. And yeah, I completely agree. Having worked as a non-regulated healthcare professional before, I do know that there are major gaps and stuff in the healthcare system. Before we get into that, though, can you kind of share a little bit about why it was so important for you? Like, I know you said that it was like important for your mom and stuff too, but I guess what were kind of the challenges, instead of just like the gaps, what were the challenges of having your mom pass away at home?
Um, well, probably one of the major challenges, which is why I say I couldn't have done it without Betty, is because you're 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
You're 24/7 caring for somebody. And from January to April, I was still working. So Betty and I were taking care of mom, and I was still going to work all day long.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't have outside care other than the PSWs who would come to our house for 3 hours a day, usually an hour and a half in the morning and an hour and a half at the end of day, which had been her routine for many years. She was given an hour and a half in the morning and an hour and a half at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a big gap of space in between there.
Yeah.
Plus, during her journey, she was having a lot of hallucinations.
Mm-hmm.
So she would sleep in the day and then be awake all night long.
Right.
So when she was awake all night long, it was very difficult for everybody in the house to sleep as well. Because when she was having hallucinations, she was terrified.
Right.
Because somebody who's experiencing hallucinations, to us, we're telling them it's not really happening, but to them, it's really happening.
Mm-hmm.
So to her, many times the house was burning down. There was floods coming down through the walls and she was going to drown. There were bogs. The hallucinations were very real to her and to anybody who suffers from them. And it's very common in end-of-life care for somebody to suffer from hallucinations. So that's one. It's very draining on you. Another one is that many in the medical community even don't believe in home death.
Mm.
And near the end of her life, she was in medically induced sedation. And even in that, like the nurses at that point were coming once a day to administer the medications. And even in that, we had one nurse phone me to say that it was her time to come and just wanted a little background. And so when I told her that she's in a medically induced coma, so she can't come to the phone, she said, well, she shouldn't be home then. She should be in the hospital. So when you have the professionals telling you that you can't be doing this,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it wears on you. And when you don't know what you can do and what you can't do, luckily, I had been a hospice volunteer since 2014. So I was fully aware that people could die at home.
Right.
So my comment to her was, maybe you shouldn't come today.
Can you get a colleague?
I said, can you maybe send someone else? Because I don't think I really want you to come here when you're going to call 911.
Right.
So that is a challenge as well, is finding people who are comfortable with that.
Right.
And my personal belief is anybody can keep their family member at home to die if they have the support systems in place to allow them to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And my becoming a death doula, that's part of what I want to do. I want to encourage people that your loved ones do not have to die in the hallway of a hospital. Your loved ones do not have to die in a nursing home where they're so overcrowded and where they just don't have enough workers that your loved one ends up dying alone and you find out the next day.
Mm-hmm.
That's my personal passion. My dream is that one day every hospital, every nursing home, every long-term care facility will have death doulas in place, because death doulas are the non-medical holistic helpers in
Mm-hmm.
death. The journey of death is somebody's personal journey that only they can do. I cannot tell them how to do it. It's their journey. They're going to do it. But I can be a support and a presence that enables them to know that they can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's one thing to be able to do something entirely different to know in your being that you can do something.
Mm-hmm. So we have Amy saying, Coming from a personal support worker, I don't agree with a lot of the stuff they do. I'm guessing you were talking about the healthcare system, and I completely agree. I used to be a hospice volunteer as well. That's awesome, Amy. And they deserve to pass in their own home if that's what their wishes are. Absolutely, I agree. I think that we're moving away from the home, like in so many aspects, even like with birth and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And like you said, like our bodies know how to do that naturally. And really, yes, either one can kind of be scary and have its risks and stuff. Well, I guess if you're dying, there's only one outcome. But, but I mean, there are risks and there are fears involved with both. And I think it's really great that we have someone like yourself and other people, and hospice included, I think, that really allows people to die with dignity how they want to. So that's great. Thank you for sharing your experience, Amy. And for those of you who are just joining in, we're talking with Maggie, and she is a certified death doula. We're just talking about her journey. So why don't you talk a little bit about maybe how hospice allowed you, or I don't know, I feel like hospice kind of gave you the strength.
They did. They absolutely did. Being a volunteer there, I knew services were available.
Mm-hmm.
However, it wasn't until I went to my doctor, and I pretty much had to insist that she be deemed palliative, because doctors don't deem somebody palliative who has congestive heart failure because there's no end date. You don't know when somebody's going to die. Mm-hmm. So I ended up going to the doctor and saying, this is the meaning of palliative. Does she have a life-altering, debilitating disease that is going to end her life? He said, yes. Then I want her deemed palliative, is what I said, because I knew there's services available to somebody who's palliative more than there are to just you and I.
Mm-hmm.
So he did, even though he said nothing's going to change, and nothing did for a while, and we didn't need it right away. And like I agree with Amy, there's a lot of problems within the healthcare system. However, it's not my job to slam those.
Right.
I think that
I can. No.
You certainly may. I think that most people within the healthcare system are doing the best that they can do with what they have. We have very limited services from our government, even though they want you to believe they're perfect. And that is a topic for another day all by itself.
Mm-hmm.
However, hospice, once she became palliative, then I had a palliative nurse assigned to her. So a palliative nurse would come to the house. And it was the palliative nurse who got her onto the hospice home care team. Mm-hmm. Once the hospice home care team was involved, they were like lifesavers. Like, they were available if I had questions. The nurse and the nurse practitioner and the doctor, they all came to the house. They came, at first they came weekly, and then they would call. Then near the end, they were coming daily. And they were available for anything that I needed. And they administered the medication. She no longer needed to go to the doctors. When it was time, they got the hospital bed. They got every service that was available to us, which is the same services that are available to people within the hospital or within nursing homes. The same services are available to people within the community. You just don't know that they're available to you. Mm-hmm. You need somebody to facilitate those services. And I always say, and they called them the Heathers because both girls' names were Heather. The Heathers from Hospice Niagara were our lifesavers because they encouraged, they came alongside. Every day they told me, what you're doing is right, don't worry. Because I loved my mother. I wanted to make sure I was making the right choices for her. Mm-hmm. And they were the support system that I didn't have. And that's the kind of support system that we need in the community. Mm-hmm. And, although Hospice Niagara serves in the facility of Hospice Niagara, they only have 10 beds there, but they have tons of services for people outside in the community. Mm-hmm. And a whole team that go out into the community for people who choose to die at home.
Mm-hmm.
So they service more than just the people that are in their building.
Mm-hmm. And sorry, Amy has a question. Do you have to be an RN in order to become a death doula?
Absolutely not. I have no medical background whatsoever because death doulas are non-medical practitioners. We do not take care of any of the medical services that somebody needs. That's why they have nurses and doctors that will come to their home. We are a support system in a holistic nature. No medical work is ever done by me or requested by me or even suggested by me. I am not a medical practitioner at all. No death doula is, to my knowledge.
Right.
If they are a registered nurse, they're outside of that capacity.
So why don't you maybe describe some of the things that a death doula would do for a family who has a member that's passing?
Well, as well, I will encourage people that they can look onto my website at whispersofwisdom.ca, and in there it lists the services. I'm also a Reiki practitioner, so I can do Reiki for somebody who's dying. I'm a mindfulness and meditation coach, so I can also practice meditations with them, talk to them, and teach them more about mindfulness. Aromatherapy, I can do aromatherapy practices with them. I can do self-care consultations for both the person who is dying, but also for the caregiver. Because although the major focus for a death doula is the dying person, that all encompasses the family members who are there with them too.
Right.
Because the family members need the self-care. And there's also legacy planning and active listening, caregiver support, grief support, death plan assistance, vigil planning, and even funeral memorials and ritual planning. All of those things can be talked about with a death doula.
I think, like, if I can just share some of my experience.
It's your show, honey. You can share.
Yeah, no. When you had already gone through the process with your mother, and I came near the end, like me and Matt met, and your mom had already decided that she would like to pass at home, and that was just like a thing, and that was fine. And so watching you go through it when it was time to kind of like go through that with my mom, you were already kind of like absorbing this role as like a death doula, like I guess kind of like without either of us knowing it. But having you been through the hospice system since like 2014 and going forward, it really it was really nice when my mom was transitioning to hospice. Because of where she lived, it wasn't really conducive for her to pass away at home. She lived in an apartment building, and it just like it wasn't set up. Like we couldn't have done it. Like I didn't want her dying in a living room type of thing. You know what I mean? So when we were moving to hospice, Maggie came and spoke with my mom about the services at hospice, what that looked like. What they would care for her, like how they would care for her there, how like we would be taken care of as a family, the services available for us. And as well, when my mom did pass, I was really grateful for Maggie because I stayed with my mom basically up until the point, like with her body, until the funeral home came to collect her. And I was really grateful for you, like even I think without you knowing that you wanted to become a death doula yet, that you sat with her until they prepared her body to be transported, and I left so that I didn't have to see that. And I think that was like, I'm really grateful for that, because that in itself can be kind of traumatic, like especially I think if someone's like maybe dying at home, like for the family to kind of maybe go up into like another room and not have to see that. But I really didn't want to leave my mom, right? Like as much as I knew her spirit was gone, like just the fact that I wanted to make sure her body was being taken care of and being like kind of honored and watched. And so is that's something that like a death doula could do as well. And you
Yeah.
were stepping into that role before you even knew that.
Absolutely. I say all the time, even with my death doula training, everybody who is a caring, compassionate person to somebody who's dying or a volunteer with hospice, all of those people are still death doulas. They just don't have the title of a death doula.
Right.
And they don't have the certification of a death doula, but we're all in life still doulas to one extent or another.
Right.
But yes, even at that point, I was on the verge of knowing that. And that's part of what a death doula can do as well, because each individual death journey is personal.
Right.
Some people like you don't want to be there after the person dies. It's too painful. They don't want to handle that. They don't have to. And that's where, if I'm called in at the beginning of a journey, we can have those conversations about what you're comfortable with, what you want me to do, what you don't want me to do. It's your choice. I meet with the dying person and their family. And you can, like, I didn't know, I would have particularly loved it. I didn't know until the doula training that family members can be the one to wash and prepare the body after death. That to me is a very sacred ritual that for some people, they would want to do that because it's a final way of giving that expression of love to your loved one, to prepare their body, that your hands are the last hands that touch them in that kind of way. But other people would go, oh my God, no, I don't want to do that. And that's where I say, for every single person, it's personal.
Right.
The journey is yours to make, and you have those choices. But nobody tells you about those choices if you don't talk about dying. And in our society, unlike other cultures, we put dying in the closet. And if somebody is diagnosed with a life-altering disease that's going to take their life, we don't want to talk about it. Shh, don't talk about it. Like, because we like to not talk about death. And I'm one, I say, just because you talk about dying doesn't make it happen faster. Right. And every single one of us are going to die anyway. So why not talk about it? Other cultures are very open about death and dying. Why we in this culture are not, I don't know. But that's where a death doula can make the journey of dying exactly how you want it to be, each individual person. My views are not in the equation at all. What I believe is not in the equation at all is what you believe, what you want. It's your journey, yours to perfect in the way you want it.
I think that's really great. So in saying that, I know that part of your journey of becoming a death doula also had to do a lot with your new spiritual journey as well. And I know those tie in a lot. Like you said, you don't like put your beliefs on other people. You allow that. But I think it's a very key part to who you are. So would you like to kind of talk about that journey a little bit as well?
Yeah. As most people would understand if you've gone through the loss of a loved one, my mother and I were close forever. So her death hit me hard. It hit me in a devastating kind of way that I didn't know who I was anymore, because I had taken care of my mom for over 10 years. And I was her go-to person. I was her support system. I was her warm, comfy, fuzzy blanket. I was that person, and suddenly that was gone. So I was devastated. She died on September 11th at 4:20, 2017. We joked about it afterwards because during the course of her journey, she didn't want to die at a day that wasn't important, and she wanted to make sure that it was important. So to me, her dying at September 11th, how nobody is ever going to forget the day that she died.
Right.
The dying at 4:20 in the morning, that was just for my son.
Yeah. I was gonna say that was totally for that.
And that's what we said. That was just for him. So she had her own personal touches that we didn't know about. So the spiritual journey is not that part. But I think the spiritual journey started because my mom woke me up. At that point, we had nurses overnight at that point in her journey. And so I went to bed. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, I heard her calling me, which was impossible because she was in a coma.
Mm-hmm.
But I heard her distinctively call me. And I came downstairs, and the nurse wouldn't let me downstairs. She said, because she was down in the family room, which is right down there.
Mm-hmm.
And the nurse wouldn't let me down the stairs. She says, no, 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 go back to bed, go back to bed. It's fine, it's fine. I looked, she was still breathing. I went back to bed. 10 minutes later, clearly, she called me again. And I got up, I came back downstairs, I looked again. And the nurse said, you need to go to bed, you need your sleep, you need your sleep. And so back upstairs I went. I had not even got back into the bed when I heard the knock, and I knew she died.
Mm-hmm.
Because we had arranged that she would knock on my sister's door because she was closest, and that way it wouldn't upset the dog and everything if she came upstairs. So as soon as I heard the knock, I knew. And immediately I knew the voices that I heard were her calling me to say goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
Because we had talked about it before she was in the coma, that, you know, I would still be there, she would still be there, that even though she was dying, she wasn't leaving me, and I would still always be there, and she would always be in my life. So I knew that she was calling me. So as I started to say, that it was devastating. So that year, in December, I had vowed that 2017, it was 2017, December 31st, and I committed to myself that 2018 was going to be my year of healing, that I was going to find the new me in this situation, because I had to. I didn't know who I was anymore. Well, little did I know when I set that intention for myself what was really happening in the spirit realm.
Mm-hmm.
Because 2018 was a year like you would not believe. I kind of cautiously go further with this because I don't want viewers to think I'm crazy. Nobody's going to hire a death doula that they think's already crazy.
No, I think it's your journey, and I mean,
but it started even with, while my mother was in that chemically induced coma, her spirit visited somebody with clear messages for me. And I didn't find out about it until many months later. And it was at that time I had taken compassionate care leave from work to stay home and care for Mom. And it was after I returned to work that I was having lunch one day with a coworker, and she just looked at me and she said, did I tell you that I hear from dead people? I said, no, I don't think that come up. And then she proceeded to tell me that during the course of the time that I was off on compassionate care leave, that my mom visited her. She always knew it was my mom visiting her, because before she would come, a cardinal would come to her window, whether she was at work or whether she was at home. A cardinal would come to her window, and then my mom would visit her. And my mom was still alive at that point. She was in this medically induced coma. But the things that this girl proceeded to tell me over the course of a few months blew my head, because I had only worked there for a few months before going off on compassionate care leave. So I didn't know her, she didn't know me. And the things that she told me, I knew only my mother would have said. And so I just took it for what it was, that I don't understand what's happening to me. I don't understand the journey, but I knew deep in my soul that it was my mother, because the things that she shared with me, only my mother knew. And this girl didn't know them. So I knew that what she was saying was true. And I just took it as that. And over the course of the year, many, many things happened that confirmed that that was true. So I tell people now, my mother, during that course of her dying, she set the course for me to become a death doula. It may have been what was implanted in me from birth, but she set the course. And I've just been obedient and allowing things to happen and allowing it to unfold. That's my part in the journey.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful that you're just really surrendering to the journey, and what comes and what falls away, and
Yeah.
I think that's a really beautiful, I think that like kind of in and of itself like taught like is how death is. Like, so I think it's nice that you're doing that. Amy has said that a friend of mine made a promise to her son that when the time comes that she passes, that she would send dragonflies down to know she's with him. So I hope that he gets those signs if your friend has passed. If not, then I hope she has a really long life, that he doesn't have to see those dragonflies for a while. So that's really amazing. Is there anything else like that you want to talk about, like with regards to like your spiritual side?
Well, first of all, in regards to the dragonflies, they will come. Just believe in your heart, because those things, when you put those out to the universe answers. And those dragonflies will come.
Yeah.
And in the same way that cardinals came for me and still do. One thing was, when I decided I would take the Death Doula course, I was still grieving, but the course came up and I didn't want to not do it, but I was still grieving. And so the day that it was time for me to go for the first day of the course, a cardinal flew right past my car as I was getting into the car, close enough that I could feel the air of its wings fly. And so I knew that I was doing the right thing. And it's kind of like, suck it up, Buttercup, because you got to do this.
This is the journey you're on now.
And it was like her saying, get going, get in the car, go there. So I did. And then the second day of the course, just to back it up a bit, we had the memorial for my mother was we let off balloons. And as I'm driving down the highway to go to the course, I look out to the side of the road and there's a whole bunch of balloons stuck in a tree.
Oh, wow.
And I just laughed inside and I said, oh God, Mama, whose balloons did you take to tell me that? Like, I could just envision her stealing some child's balloons and that child's crying, but she had to put those balloons in that tree for me to get the message. So that was the second day, and that was the message to me that she was still there and she was still driving this journey. And it's been ongoing like that. There's been random things all the time, and different things happening, number sequences, and just in the way somebody told me about a place called Lilydale in New York, which is a spiritual center. And in the same week, a second person did. And then you and I went there. It's just been a constant during the whole time. And to the point of where I am now in the meditation group that I belong to and the journey that I'm on, it's all just been a sequence of happenings. Not one of the things did I make happen.
Right.
The doors just opened and I flowed through. The door opens, I flow through. And it's just being willing to accept things that you don't understand. And that's a big thing spiritually for me, because I grew up with a spiritual background. And in the spiritual culture that I came from, things to do with mediums and metaphysical things, that was frowned upon. That was, we were told, you're not supposed to touch that. That's bad stuff. But I've come to understand since, and as I've said to other people who are, still that same kind of, this box is what spirituality is. And I've said to people, is it not possible that maybe the box doesn't look like you think it is? Is it not possible that there's room for something different? Matt and I had that conversation when we went out for coffee, and he said, "Oh, Karina has ruined you, Mom." Although you're wonderful, darling, I can't give you the credit for ruining me. But it's not that. It's that when you tell the universe, I'm willing to try new things and I want to heal, the universe hears you. And I think the reason that this journey began for me is because my mom knew that some of the deep wounds that I had were rooted in spiritual teachings and spiritual hurts. So I think that the universe knew that I needed a different route to heal. I needed something different. And I don't want to pretend, and I'm not going to say sitting here that I understood it all right from the start. I don't even understand it all now, but I'm willing to accept that all of these different changes that have gone on in this time, I'm willing to accept that there's more to the universe than I understand.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to embrace it. And as I say to people, if you're on this journey, trust your intuition. All of us has God-given intuition. Trust your intuition, because the universe isn't going to take you somewhere that you're not supposed to go. You're going to know if something's on the dark side, so to speak. You're going to know if it's something that's not for you. And you just have to trust that feeling in your gut that tells you this is good, this is bad. We have it all the time in us.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my journey spiritually right now.
I think it was like a good point that you brought up, that like with regards to Matt saying that like I ruined you, but I think what you said was really true, that like, I may have helped open you up to this side, but really this was your journey to take and do with it what you will. So I think that's really important, that like it's really great to have mentors and to follow all those people, but really you are the driving force behind your own journey. And
I think even as a young child, I had an intuitive heart. And even as a young child, I remember my mother used to tell me that my father would say to her, like from a very young age, he would say to her, there's something different with her. She's way too sensitive. She's way too sensitive. You got to toughen her up. And now, knowing what I know about a spiritual journey and intuition and the intuitive side of things, I think I was intuitive even back then, but it wasn't growing. And then when this journey happened with my mother, the way that it was explained to me is that when somebody dies close to you and when you suffer a significant loss, the veil between life and death opens. If you're somebody who is of an intuitive nature, that veil will open further. And then if you're somebody who accepts what happens to you and accepts what's going on and is curious about it, the veil opens further. And so the way that it kind of was explained to me, because I started this journey and because I was willing to see what's out there and because I was willing to trust spirit to not take me places that weren't good for me, my veil just completely blew open. And now that's why now things are happening that I never imagined. And I have visions. Remember the first time that you did Reiki on me? I have visions. I have visions all the time. And it's because I did not close that veil up again. And I think all of us as individual people have a choice. And that's where free will comes into it. I will either, oh no, this is not for me, or yes, I'm going to explore this. And when you explore things with an open heart, the universe just says, okay, you're willing. Here we go. And it's like I said to somebody this week about this Death Doula business and the journey that I'm on now. When you tell spirit, I want you to drive my car and I'm ready to go with you, get ready for the ride of your life. Because you don't know where you're going. Next month, I'm speaking at a women's conference up north. You don't know where you're going.
Yeah.
You just have to be ready for the ride.
Yeah. You are definitely enjoying it. And embracing it. And that's why I love it. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to have you on, because this journey is fairly new for you. Like, and it's happening very rapidly. And like I said before, like, you're just surrendering. And I think that that's something that we need to see more of, is that, like, we as a society are so fear-based. Like, I can't do this because I might have someone that in my life that doesn't accept me. And it's, you really said, like, nope, who loves me is going to accept me and going to know that, like, my journey is for the greater good. And I really love that. And I'm really hoping that people get inspired by you, because you inspire me every day. Like, you know, like the phone calls that I get, and I'm just like, wow, how is this happening? Like, great, good for you. Like,
today.
Yeah. It's so awesome. And I'm just like, I'm really proud of you for stepping into the person that you are becoming. So,
well, and it's kind of like you said, those that love you will accept you no matter what.
mm-hmm.
And you see the difference by the fruit.
Right.
I'm not the same person that I was in 2016,
mm-hmm.
because of all of those things that my mother went and talked to somebody about that needed healing. All of those things had deep, deep wounds within my soul.
mm-hmm.
And when your soul is hurt and broken, you carry that. You exude that. That comes out of your being. I was a very angry person because all of those wounds were there.
mm-hmm.
They weren't being taken care of. So what you seen spilling out of my faucet was all of that stuff that was there.
Right.
So now, after I've gone through that year of healing, what you see coming out of my faucet now
mm-hmm.
is light.
Right.
What you see coming out of my faucet is
mm-hmm.
all of the newness. What you see coming out of my faucet is love.
Right.
Because all of those wounds are gone.
mm-hmm.
All of those wounds are healed. It doesn't mean that my past never happened to me. What it means is it doesn't define me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what soul healing does for somebody. When you heal from the inside out, instead of trying to just cover it up with a mask of, oh, I'm fine, I've got everything taken care of, my ducks are all in a row, don't worry about me. Because that was me for all of those years. I had every mask that you could imagine to cover up that I was really a wounded person.
mm-hmm.
We suffered significant losses in our life. That wound and cut. Both of my children were wounded people. Don't cover it up with a mask. I say open it up and let the universe heal those wounds.
mm-hmm.
When you say I want those wounds healed, they will heal.
mm-hmm.
And the universe will place people in your life to help you in your journey. And then what will come out of your spirit is the real you.
Right.
Not the you brokenness.
Right. Do you that? Yeah.
And that's what I tell people. If you don't believe what's going on with me, and if you don't believe in my spiritual journey, that's okay with me. But see the different me.
Right.
See it by the fruit of what I am.
Right.
If I don't appear different to you, that's up
fine.
To you.
That's fine too.
And you don't have to believe that this stuff is really happening and really true. It doesn't affect my life at all if you don't believe.
Yeah.
But I tell you, if you do believe and you allow it to change your life, it will change your life.
Yeah. I completely agree with that, because
I know, because you ruined me.
Yeah. You keep saying that. So if you'd like to be
Just call 555.
Yeah. I think that's really great. One thing I like to ask just my guests, especially when they're on kind of like a spiritual journey like yourself, my mantra for the month of February, because February is the month of love, is to send it love. So whenever I have like a self-doubting moment, when I find myself judging someone else, this month, I realized some of my jealous side, like that kind of stuff. Even just like good things, past relationships. I'm sending it all love to help myself heal that wound. What would you say is your mantra right now?
I love you.
Hmm.
I was taught that this past week
Mm-hmm.
at my meditation class. The power in the words, I love you.
Mm-hmm.
How it changes you and how
Mm-hmm.
it changes somebody else.
Right.
That just saying those words
Mm-hmm.
changes things in the universe.
Yeah.
And I don't understand it all yet because it was just taught to me. But it's true. It changes you.
Right.
I also had another wise person in my life teach me the power of I am.
Yes.
I meditate to the words I am, and I do an I am mantra every morning. When I stand in the mirror, I say I am whatever I feel I'm lacking.
Mm-hmm.
So if I feel like right now for this particular week, I'm saying I am technology wise. I am.
Yeah.
Because what we put out there comes back to us.
Yeah.
And so I challenge people to look up, Google the power of the I am meditation
Mm-hmm.
because it changes your life.
Right.
It changes your life. The same as I have a mantra that I do in the morning and I have a mantra that I do at night. It's not a big deal. It's just when I go to bed at night, I say, I have done the best that I can do today. And that's all I can do.
Mm-hmm.
In the morning, I say, thank you for waking me up. Thank you, I'm still alive. Let me be the best that I can be today, and I'm your servant. So it kind of just opens it up to the universe. Here I am.
Right.
Here I am, a vessel. Just use me.
Mm-hmm.
Do with me what you want for your service today. And it works. You know, it's like, I love Maya Angelou. And one of her famous sayings is, do what you know how to do until you know how to do it better.
Mm-hmm.
And then I used to beat myself up about the things that I did wrong. I don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know any better. Now that I know better, I have to do better.
Right.
So for anybody out there, if you're doing the best that you can with what you know, that's enough.
Mm-hmm.
When you learn how to do better, do better.
Mm-hmm.
Look to learn how to do better. But until you do, what you're doing is enough.
Yeah.
And you are enough.
I just want to say, hi, Phyllis. From Mexico. Oh,
oh hi. Look what Mag is doing now.
So I think that's really great. I really like that mantra as well. I use that in my life all the time. Now that I know better, I'm going to do better, and I'm going to constantly be finding ways to be doing better. And even yesterday, I might not have known that today I would learn something that, like, unlearn something, and going forward, I'm going to always do better by what I now know. So.
Yeah. And that's like the simple little thing that I was taught at the meditation group about I love you. And it was funny the way that it came up because a lot of us, me included, sometimes I have a little bad conversations in the car when I'm driving with other drivers. And I was taught that if you do the I love you when somebody cuts you off instead of it puts something different into the universe because I really don't know why they cut me off. Right. I don't know what's going on in their life that caused that. But I do know that maybe they need love because every single one of us do. Right. So, and it doesn't mean that I'm always going to do it right. Sometimes I'm still going to do it.
We are human. We are human. Okay, so as we are wrapping up, I want to talk to you about some events that you have coming up. So on March 8th to the 10th, you have your conference that Balance for Better, Women Inspiring Women. Where is that being held?
In Haileybury, Ontario.
Nice.
And that conference, this conference is kind of the beginning of this eagle taking flight because I said yes to speaking at this conference before I really knew where it was. unlike Phyllis online there who's in Mexico, Haley Berry is not in Mexico. It's where they still have snow up to the start of heaven.
Yep. We just got back from around there, and there's a lot of snow.
And for anybody who knows me personally, I am not a fan. So that's kind of Spirit's sense of humor in getting me to say yes to this before I knew where it was. But I'm super, super excited to go and speak to these women and to be inspired by these women and to share. Mm-hmm. I think the fact that Spirit made this happen without any of us making it happen, there's something wonderful going to come out of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's exciting.
And you also are starting something on your own, and I'll let you talk about that. And mm-hmm. I'll be sure to share it in my tonight and in the comments below as well.
Yeah, I'm also going to host my very first Death Cafe with another Death Doula, Tamara, and that's going to be on March the 23rd at the Village of Healing and Wellness at 50 Gale Crescent in St. Catharines. And a Death Cafe is just where you come together as a group, drink a beverage, coffee, tea, or whatever, have some treats, and talk about death and dying. And it's a global group that believes that everybody has a chance to talk about death and dying, and it doesn't mean you're going to die any faster. Mm. And they're happening all over the place. You can have death cafes and you'll see them popping up. And it's just a good way to bring death out of the darkness, because the more that we talk about death and dying, the less it is so frightening and scary.
Yeah, I think that's...
And we might as well talk about it because we're all going to do it.
Yep. 2 things are guaranteed in life: taxes and death. Well, I think that's amazing. If you would like to hear more of what Maggie has to say, you are doing some radio shows and stuff like that. So when I link up your web address and your Facebook, you can find all the events on there. I'd like to thank you so much for being here with me and finishing off my February, my first month of this featured femme.
The month of love.
The month of love. And just sharing.
Would you like a rose petal for your month of love?
Sure, yeah. I'll take 2. And I'll add them to my saging rituals I do. But yeah, so thank you so much for joining me and honoring us with your presence. And just, Stephanie's here now. We're just leaving Stephanie, but be sure to check the replay. And yeah, so thank you. And I hope that everyone got a little bit something out of this. If you have further questions about death doulas, like what the course entails and all that kind of stuff, please reach out to Maggie either on her Facebook or her website, and I'll be sure to post all that stuff in the comment sections, but also in its separate posts. If you would like to be a featured femme, please reach out to me. I do them every Friday. I am now booking into April, and if you're a woman in business and you want a chance to inspire others, just reach out. No business is too big or too small. I'd love to have you. So have a great day and happy weekend, everyone. Bye. Bye.